I would like to discuss some updates concerning Yersin and Montandon, and also I would like to go into a little bit more depth concerning the allegorical clock that they have. But let us begin with a revelation which has just surfaced concerning our main watchmaker, David-François Montandon. Now, he was born in 1732. However, we have not been able to determine the date of his death. Yet, there is some promising information that has come to light with regards to a passport application from 1808. Now, this information is held specifically in a summary by the Centre Historique des Archives Nationales. It's entitled Demande de Passeport. It's for the period 1793 to 1818. And we see an index of the names of people. Now, this is specifically a list of foreigners applying for passports. And one is given the impression that in this case, we find a Montandon. It is misspelled as Montandon. This is a common error, however. But even more interestingly, the name David, Francois, and it says on his entry that he is a Swiss négociant, and the date is 1808 is given. This is after they had already switched away from the French Revolutionary calendar, after 1805, I believe, and they went back to the normal numbering system. So this is totally to be expected. However, the name itself it appears in a pattern, David, Francois. And normally we would see this as a hyphen, David-François. So we look at other entries to compare the system that they have entered these. And interestingly, there is a Montflorence, James, Cole. And he is listed as an American diplomat. And when we go to Wikipedia, we find James Cole Montflorence. So this Cole is a middle name. He was an American businessman and Federalist diplomat in Paris during the French Revolution. So already we can see that this name is specifically related to a David-François Montandon, who was a négociant at this time. And one must say that this name individual, we have only one, and it is our watchmaker. So we have very much hope that we have now determined the possible time of his death. It would have had to have been after 1808, based on this passport information. So this is very promising. And this also brings us to the conclusion that this list appears to be for those applying possibly for citizenship in these passports. And this raises the question whether he had dual citizenship. Now, obviously, he would have lived in France for decades. It is apparent that he must have traveled back and forth because both of his daughters are registered in Neuchâtel in Switzerland. So it is possible that his wife and children were living more or less all of the time in Switzerland while he was earning a living at the business in Paris. Probably he commuted back and forth frequently, but this is speculation, obviously. Now, with regards to another development which has surfaced out of the blue, this is a very interesting discovery. This, as we discussed, there are only 3 known objects that have been discovered, signed Yersin Montandon à Paris. these being a gold montre ronde, which is at the Louvre Museum, a second pocket watch, a quantième, which is made of silver, and then this statue clock, mental clock, allegorical clock, which was sold in 2017 by Drouot, and appears to be entitled. It is based on the allegory de l'amour. So a new item appears to have surfaced, a similar clock, an allegorical clock, and this was mentioned in a document which is La Chronique des Arts et de la Curiosité. It was a supplement to the La Gazette des Beaux-Arts, and this was published in May of 1908. And we find out that as a matter of fact, the same venue, Drouot, the hotel, Drouot, halls 9 and 10 was an auction, and they list a pendule marbre, blanc et bronze, ciselé et doré. And this is a Louis XVI epoch clock, which is exactly in the manner of the first allegorical clock we find. It is white marble and bronze, a gilded bronze. However, this one is entitled Allégorie de la Fidélité, and the cadran is signed Yersin Montandon. Now, the selling price of this object was apparently 3,000 francs. Once again, as in the case of the first Yersin Montandon allegorical clock, which was sold by Drouot, the name of Yersin was misspelled as Versin. And once again here, 100 years prior at this 1908 sale, we see Yersin is spelled Jeroin, and clearly the ornate Y may have been poorly visible or legible on the cadran, the dial surface. Likewise, the S would have possibly looked like an O for reasons that are not clear. Sadly, we do not have a picture of this. Yet, the fact that we have a second allegory clock on a different theme, fidelity, the first was love, this would have been depicted in a totally different fashion. These allegorical clocks tell more or less stories with the figures. They're sort of statue clocks, and the unmistakable Cupid of the first clock, the allegory of love, would not have been confused with fidelity. This is a totally different virtue. And this also leads us to conclude that there may have been a series of these types of clocks, of these allegorical clocks that Yersin Montandon made. And if you consider the theological virtues, there are the three theological virtues according to St. Paul of the Bible, and this is love, fidelity or faith, and hope. So this raises the question, is there a third such clock out there somewhere undiscovered in a private collection, probably in France somewhere, on the theme of hope? This is a very interesting supposition, and we don't know how many of these clocks may be out there or indeed were made. However, this does seem to be a series of clocks. Perhaps all of these clocks were made for one family, so that they would have a complete set of these allegorical themed clocks in various different rooms of their large mansions. This would have been made for the extremely wealthy, and probably in the 1780s, before the heyday of the French Revolution after 1789. It does seem that they had a very good business going for these types of allegorical pieces. Now, it's interesting, this type of clock are normally somewhat rare after 1830 because of the techniques for making the clocks. This so-called ormolu clock is made using a gilding process that involves the use of mercury. And because of the poisonous dimension, it was banned. It was banned after 1830, and we see less and less of these clocks after that time. But these two revelations, the appearance of passport information regarding David-François, which gives us a much better frame for his lifetime, and the discovery of a fourth Yersin Montandon object are worthy of this notation for the record. So thank you for your attention.